Okay, let's get started. First, we're going to remove our mass airflow sensor. Remove the clip at the top, then remove the sensor on the other side. Now you're going to push the silver tab backwards and pull up on the mass airflow sensor thing as hard as you can. Now you have to remove the elbow that holds the mass airflow sensor to the throttle body. Push the tab on the bottom of the elbow and then lift the top tab up and then remove the hose on the other side of the elbow. I'll show you in a second. This is where the hose is connected. Pull that hose out. This is the tab you have to push on at the bottom of the elbow, and this is the top tab that's locking the elbow in. So first you have to push down on the bottom tab and then lift up on the top tab and then pull the hose out. Then the elbow will come right off. As you can see, this hose is connected to your valve cover, just in case you're confused as to which hose to pull off. Now you need to remove the clips that are connected to your coils on the driver's side and the passenger side. Now you're going to remove the clips that are connected to your fuel injectors. There's 4 on both sides. It's easier to remove the metal clips first and then remove the plastic part from the fuel injectors. The clips at the very front are the hardest clips to move, so I think I ended up doing that way later. If you can get them all out at once, that's cool too. Whatever's easy for you. Once you've got all of the connections disconnected, make sure you put the metal clips right back onto the connections because you don't want to lose them. Now you need a 17th circle stick with a crab arm. You need this to remove your fuel line. Be careful when you remove your fuel line. Put down some towels because gasoline might leak all over the place and you don't want to blow up. Okay, on top of the throttle body, there's 2 hoses that are connected to a little rubber nub. You have to lift the nub off the throttle body. Inside of the nub, you'll see there's 2 little holes. This is the little rubber nub you have to remove from the throttle body. It connects to this hole, and behind this hole, there's another hole that it connects to. Just pull that nub off. Now you have to undo all of these tiny little clips. Now remove this zip tie. I'm going to put a pink zip tie so that when I put everything back together, I'll remember that it needs to be zip tied back down. If you see me using a neon zip tie, it's just so that I can remember that something goes in that spot, or so that I can remember that I disconnected a hose somewhere. Alright, remember we removed the fuel injector clips? Remember we removed the metal prongs first and then pulled out the connector? That's what we're going to do with the yellow clip. This yellow clip is connected to your EGR valve. Don't forget to put the metal clip back onto the connector. Under this plastic cage, there's a few clips that you have to undo. Make sure you undo those clips so you don't just rip it off. cable is connected to a tiny little electric box that fits into this plastic cubby. You have to remove it. Also, under here, there's a hidden tab, so make sure you disconnect that as well. Let me show you something else. Okay, behind this hose, there's another hidden tab. Now I'm going to disconnect this snake hose. Now you need a number 8 wrench. Now we're going to disconnect the cage that holds down the entire fuel line. I'm also going to add a zip tie. Now I'm going to zip tie the cage out of the way so that when it's time to remove the intake manifold, it doesn't get caught. I'm going to remove one of the fuel injector clips so I can get to the fuel line. I'm going to remove this bolt and this bolt and the bolts on the other side and any other bolts that may be holding down the fuel line. I don't know what this is, but it says it's a Duralast 8 50101 socket. It looks like a starfish inside. Now I'm gonna remove the fuel line. Now that the fuel line is out, I'm going to change all of my O-rings. I'm also going to clean my fuel injectors as best as I possibly can. Now that I got my old O-rings off, I'm going to put my new O-rings on. This is so you don't get gasoline leaking in your vehicle. And better gas mileage. So I just removed the screws from the intake manifold. There's one here, and one here, and one at the front. There's 4 on both sides of the intake manifold. The only difference is the first 3 screws are tiny little screws, and the back screw has this big loop black thing. I used this stick thing with a 10 socket. Now I'm going to do the driver's side because I already did the passenger side. This was also on the back side too. I already took the 4 bolts off of that side, and I already took the 4 bolts off of this side. Something that's weird is that I found something that looks like it's disconnected. It's coming from the EGR valve. I don't know what it is. I'm going to remove this black hose from the intake manifold. Then I'm going to remove the little one that's next to it. Last but not least, I have to remove the sensor that's connected to the throttle body.
Take your medication, Roman. Take a short vacation, Roman. You'll be okay.
That came from right here. And this one connects to here. Then I'm going to disconnect this hose next to the EGR valve. But first I'm going to put a zip tie on the other one so I don't forget where they go. I'm going to start removing other hoses so you can just follow along. Alright, now we're going to remove the two long screws that are holding down the EGR valve. Do not remove the EGR valve from the intake manifold. Remove it from the car. Now I'm going to remove this hose and put a zip tie around it. These next two hoses are the most difficult hoses you have to remove on this car. Be really careful because I accidentally broke both of mine. Now you're going to disconnect these two little hoses connected to this electronic cube. Be careful when lifting up your intake manifold because this gasket that goes to the EGR valve might slip out. You don't want to lose it! Wow, I finally got my intake manifold out. This is a throttle body that we took out the other day and cleaned. I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to clean it in a bit. Wow, I've never seen the inside of this before. I just want to climb in there like a little chicken in an egg. That's a cute little cubby hole. Now I'm going to put blue shop towels inside of the holes and get ready to start cleaning the mating surfaces. Okay, so it's nighttime now. I just cleaned the surfaces and look how pretty they are. They're not all gunky and nasty like they were before. How elegant. I also cleaned the mating surfaces on the intake manifold. I used a wire brush and brake parts cleaner, but you have to be really careful with the wire brush because you don't want to damage the mating surfaces. Now I'm going to pull the towels out and clean the inside with a shop vac. I should have shop vac'd it first and then pull the towels out, but I totally forgot. Alright, now I'm going to get my new gaskets ready. First I'm going to align them on the car just to see what it looks like, and then I'll use my 3M adhesive just to keep the gaskets in place. Seriously, don't forget the EGR valve gasket. If you forget this, you're going to have a major vacuum leak and your car's going to start acting up. I'll show you where it goes. I'm just admiring how pretty and clean my throttle body is. Okay, now I'm going to put my intake manifold back together now that everything is clean. Now that the intake manifold is back in the car, let's go ahead and put everything back together. Follow along. Plug this up first and then plug this one in. Plug in these two difficult hoses. Now plug in this connection to this little thing. Now plug in these two cute little hoses. Now plug this hose up to this and this fat hose up to this. Now we're going to connect the EGR valve back to the car. You're going to need your 2 long screws. Oh, you also need your 10 socket. We're going to put 1 screw here and 1 screw here. When you're done, this is what it looks like. Now plug in this hose that's next to the EGR valve. This is what it should look like too. Okay, now on the driver's side, what we're going to do next is you're going to grab this little hose and put it in that little hole. Now plug in this fat hose to the fat hole. Make sure it's under the squiggly throttle hose. And make sure it's also under the snake hose. See, make sure it's under the hoses before you plug it in. Now you need to reconnect your throttle sensor. You'll know it's connected when you hear 1 click. Yay! Now we're going to go ahead and lock down the intake manifold. This is where the engine bracket goes. There's 1 screw there, there's 1 there, and there's 1 hidden at the very front. Grab your long screws and your engine bracket. Oh, don't forget your 10 socket too. We're going to put our fuel rail back into the car. Grab your screws and make sure your fuel injectors are all the way inside of the car so your gasoline doesn't leak, and you need an 8 socket. Now follow closely. Grab your 8 wrench. We're going to attach the black cage to your fuel line. Connect this part to your fuel line and wrap this silver thing around it. Then we're going to screw it shut with this. It should look like this. Okay, now we're going to reconnect our snake hose. Now tuck all of your black wires under the black cage. You need to clip all of your clips shut, even the hidden clips. Get them all. Don't forget the front clips too. And there's 2 electrical connections. There's one under here and one under here. Make sure you slide them inside of their little boxes that's under the black cage. Now zip tie your coil connections and your 1 fuel injector clip back in its original spot. See, this is what it looks like. Now connect the yellow clip back to the EGR valve. Now zip tie the rest of your fuel injector clips back to the fuel line. Now go to your throttle body and make sure all of the hoses are connected to your throttle body. Also, make sure this hose is connected to the throttle body too. See, this is what it looks like. Now grab your 17 wrench. We're going to reconnect our fuel line. Okay, now we're going to reconnect our fuel clips to our fuel injectors. Now I'm going to reconnect my coil plugs to my coils. Now grab your elbow for the mass airflow sensor. This is my favorite part. Don't forget, there's a hose that goes here. This is the bottom clip and this is the top clip. This is going to connect to your throttle body. Now grab your mass airflow sensor and make sure the sensor part is facing you. Now connect your sensor to the mass airflow sensor. Now put on your mass airflow sensor clamp. Last but not least, don't forget to reconnect this hose on the valve cover. Now that you're done, make sure you check all of your work. Make sure everything is connected because you don't want misfires, you don't want vacuum leaks or oil leaks.